The best cheap graphics cards of 2023. Looking for the best cheap graphics card in 2023 can be overwhelming due to the variety of options. While affordability doesn't mean sacrificing quality, budget-friendly cards can offer great performance at lower resolutions. The best 1080p graphics card is often sufficient, while 4K may be overkill for streamers. Industry leaders AMD, Intel, and Nvidia have compiled the best cheap graphics cards to help budget-conscious gamers find the perfect card. Number 5. NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3050. The device features stream processors with 2560 cores, a 1552 MHz core boost clock, 8 GB GDDR6 memory, 14 GB per second clock, 1 x 8-pin power connectors, and HDMI 2.1 and 3x DisplayPort 1.4 outputs. The NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3050 is a budget-friendly graphics card suitable for 1080p gaming, offering features like machine learning-enabled deep learning supersampling, DLSS, technology and tensor cores for fast frame rates and creative workloads. It is a solid choice for AMD cards, but the RTX 3050 is expensive compared to the GTX 1050 and GTX 1650, which are nearly half the price. However, with graphics card price inflation, this is the lowest price for a graphics card with advanced features and high performance. Number 4. Intel Arc A750. The device features 3584 stream processors, a 2050 MHz core base clock, a 2400 MHz core boost clock, 8 GB GDDR6 memory, 16 GB per second clock, 1 x 8-pin power connectors, and 3x DisplayPort 2.0 outputs. Intel has come a long way with its Arc graphics cards since they launched, and the Arc A750 offers solid 1080p, and even 1440p, performance at a very attractive price tag. And, thanks to Intel's fairly extensive history with AI powering hardware, its Intel ZSS super sampling technology fares shockingly well against Nvidia's much more mature DLSS technology, even if it ultimately has to take second place to the likes of the RTX 3060. What's more, its ray tracing hardware is also surprisingly solid for a first-generation discrete graphics card, and it can play some games like Returnal like a Dream. Other games though might not fare as well, especially older DX9 and DX10 titles, but Intel is regularly updating its drivers, so a lot of these issues will likely get straightened out in time. If you're okay with some growing pains, there's a lot to like about Intel's A750. Number 3. AMD Radeon RX 6600. Specifications: stream processors, 1792 ray tracing cores, 28 core base clock, 1,626 MHz core boost clock, 2,491 MHz memory, 8 GB GDDR6 memory clock, 14 Gbps power connectors, 1x8-pin outputs, 1 x HDMI 2.1, 3x DisplayPort 1.4a. When it comes to performance, the AMD Radeon RX 6600 isn't far behind the RX 6600 XT, but this slimmed-down version of the Navi 23 GPU is a far more enticing option for a dedicated capital B budget build. This card can easily play the finest PC games at 1080p with frame rates north of 30 FPS, if not closer to 60 FPS on some medium lift games, on high or maximum settings, thanks to some very respectable 1080p performance and support for features like AMD Radeon Super Resolution. Meanwhile, this graphics card is far less expensive than AMD's XT model, so if you want the highest performance at the lowest price, with an emphasis on affordability, this is the card to consider. Number 2. NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4060. Specifications: stream processors, 3072 ray tracing cores, 24 core base clock, 1,830 MHz core boost clock, 2,460 MHz memory, 8 GB GDDR6 memory clock, 17 Gbps power connectors, 1x12 pin. The NVIDIA RTX 4060 has frustrated some folks out there who are looking for the kind of gen-on-gen performance uplift we saw with more expensive NVIDIA Lovelace offerings like the RTX 4070, but these demands are misplaced. The RTX 4060 is a fantastic mid-range graphics card that's easy to find under $300/$300 right now, which is less than some NVIDIA RTX 3060 cards still on the market. It's not the kind of card that will blow you away if you already have an RTX 3060 or better, but if you're coming from older NVIDIA or AMD hardware, as most gamers will be, this card will be nothing short of a revelation, all for less than the launch price of the RTX 3060 it replaces. It's not a perfect card, obviously. Its biggest misfire is the 8GB VRAM and 128-bit memory bus, which pretty much limits how much performance you'll be able to squeeze out at 1440p, but it's still doable, especially with the advances that DLSS 3 brings to the table. Number 1. AMD Radeon RX 7600. The device features 38-2048 ray accelerators, a 2625 MHz boost clock, 8GB GDDR6 memory, 165 watts power draw, 18 gigabits per second memory clock, 1 x 8-pin power connectors, and 3x DisplayPort 2.1 outputs. The AMD Radeon RX 7600 is coming to bring AMD RDNA 3 to the sub $300/$300 category, and despite its reduced price, it delivers considerable of performance. Its 1080p performance is really outstanding for the budget, even outperforming the NVIDIA RTX 3060 Ti 12GB. Its 1440p performance is also rather good given the card's 8GB VRAM and 128-bit memory bus. In terms of gaming performance, all of the finest PC games at 1080p can easily achieve 60 frames per second, with the majority of them operating on the maximum graphical settings. For more demanding games like Cyberpunk 2077, some settings tweaking may be required, but it's still quite achievable, especially with AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution. Its ray tracing performance is still inferior to NVIDIA's last-gen mid-range cards, but RDNA 3 has significantly reduced the gap between the two, so you don't have to forego ray tracing entirely by opting for a lesser AMD card.